Earth, 247. The once brilliant blue orb now pulsated with anxiety beneath a canopy of solar collection stations that formed a delicate, glittering crown in low orbit. Lieutenant Mai An stood at the panoramic window of Earth Planetary Alliance, EPA headquarters, watching as another solar flare disrupted the distant array of collectors. The entire global network flickered momentarily before stabilizing, a concerning sign of the planet's increasing energy vulnerability. Anne's reflection stared back at her, sharp eyes set in a face hardened by years of specialized communications training. At 32, she had risen quickly through the ranks to become the EPA's Special Communications Officer, responsible for maintaining the integrity of humanity's most precious resource after energy itself: information. Lieutenant An, command requires your presence immediately. The voice of her assistant, Junior Lieutenant Lin Ni, cut through her thoughts. An nodded, straightening her midnight blue uniform with a practiced gesture. Status report? Solar interference patterns increasing by 17%. All collection stations reporting anomalies in energy transfer. Ni's voice was clinical, but Anne detected the underlying tension. The central command chamber hummed with activity as Anne entered. Massive holographic displays dominated the center, showing real-time data from every EPA outpost across Earth and near-orbit installations. Colonel Tran Lam stood at the command podium, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. Lieutenant An, he acknowledged with a curt nod. Our communications grid is experiencing unusual pattern disruptions, not consistent with solar activity. Anne moved to her station, fingers dancing across the interface. Confirmed, sir. These aren't natural fluctuations. She pulled up a diagnostic overlay that revealed microscopic inconsistencies in the transmission protocols. These signatures suggest deliberate interference. The EPA's communications network was considered impenetrable, a real-time web connecting command bases, warships, and civilian infrastructure. It was the nervous system of planetary defense and governance. The thought of it being compromised sent a chill through Anne's spine. Security assessment, Colonel Lam demanded. System integrity at 97%, but dropping incrementally. These are precision intrusions, sir. Anne's voice remained steady despite the implications. Someone is testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. Before Lam could respond, the central display flickered violently. The standard feed dissolved into static before reforming into an unfamiliar emblem, a stylized hammer crossed with what appeared to be a communications antenna. Hummel, whispered security engineer Huang Fuk from his station nearby. It's them. The image gave way to a message scrolling across every screen in the command center. Critical alert. Energy collection station, Alpha 7 chain reaction imminent. Catastrophic failure estimated in 3 hours. Chaos erupted in the command center. Officers scrambled to verify the information. Communications channels suddenly flooded with panicked inquiries from global stations. Anne's console lit up with incoming emergency protocols being automatically initiated. Verification, barked Colonel Lam above the noise. I need immediate verification. Anne's fingers flew across her interface, attempting to establish direct contact with Alpha 7. Sir, I can't get a clean channel to the station. Communications are being actively blocked. Put me through to any nearby vessel, Lam ordered. Attempting, sir, but all standard channels are compromised. We're receiving conflicting reports from multiple sources, some confirming the alert, others denying it. Anne's training kept her voice level. But inside, her mind raced through contingencies. Within minutes, the situation deteriorated further. The headquarters communication systems began transmitting the warning to civilian channels. Global panic indicators spiked as the population received emergency evacuation notices. This is a deliberate attack on our command and control systems, Anne stated, analyzing the pattern of disruption. The warning is fabricated. I've managed to get partial telemetry from Alpha 7's auxiliary systems. There's no evidence of a chain reaction. Colonel Lamb's expression darkened. Hummel isn't trying to destroy us. They're testing our response capabilities. Sir, and continued, they've infiltrated our primary communications network. Standard protocols are compromised. We can't trust any incoming or outgoing transmissions. The colonel stood silently for a moment, weighing options as the command center continued its frantic activity around him. Then, with sudden resolve, he accessed his command override. Attention all personnel. His voice resonated through the facility. Effective immediately, I am activating silent protocol drill. The command center fell silent. The silent protocol was theoretical, a contingency so extreme it had never been implemented outside of simulations. It required shutting down nearly all communication channels, forcing military personnel to rely on backup codes and manual transmission methods. Sir, and ventured, silent protocol will effectively blind us to the very channels that are currently being used against us. Lam finished. Lieutenant An, you will coordinate the transition. We have 3 hours to re-establish secure communications before Hummel realizes their bluff hasn't worked. Anne swallowed hard. Her entire career had been built on mastering the EPA's sophisticated communications systems. Now she was being asked to abandon them and rely on methods considered archaic by modern standards. Yes, sir. Initiating silent protocol. The transition was brutal. Within minutes, the command center's connectivity to global networks severed. Screens went dark, replaced by local-only systems running on isolated power. Personnel who had never operated without AI assistance or real-time data suddenly found themselves relying on training many had considered obsolete. And assembled a team of communication specialists in a secure chamber deep within the headquarters. We need to establish a baseline of trusted communication nodes, she explained, unfolding physical maps across a table, paper backups that hadn't been used in years. Low-frequency radio transmissions, directional laser signaling, and courier drones with physical encryption keys. She continued, we'll create a new communications web from scratch. This is insane, muttered one officer. We're voluntarily cutting ourselves off when we should be fighting back. We are fighting back, and countered. By going silent, we're denying Hummel their primary weapon, our own network. Junior Lieutenant Nee stepped forward. I've prepared the backup frequency modulators. We can begin establishing point-to-point connections with verified outposts. Over the next hour, Anne's team worked feverishly to create a skeleton communications framework. Engineer Fuck led efforts to decrypt intercepted Hummel transmissions, searching for patterns that might reveal their true objectives. They're sophisticated, Fuck reported, pointing to code sequences displayed on a secure terminal. They've been planning this for months, possibly years. The infiltration is too precise to be opportunistic. Anne nodded grimly. Focus on establishing secure channels to our orbital assets first. We need eyes above. As the silent protocol took effect throughout EPA forces, confusion gave way to disciplined adaptation. Years of training in contingency operations began to show results as units reported in using prearranged backup systems. Colonel Lam entered the communications center, his face showing both concern and determination. Status report. Lieutenant, we've established secure connections with 67% of critical installations. And replied, Orbital Command has confirmed Alpha 7 is stable. No signs of the reported chain reaction. Hummel's alert was entirely fabricated. Good. And our response capabilities? Anne hesitated. Limited, sir. We can coordinate defensive operations, but offensive capabilities are restricted without full network integration. That's by design. Lieutenant, Hummel wants us to react rashly, to expose our methods. Lam studied the physical map, where Anne had been marking verified communication nodes. Their goal isn't destruction, it's intelligence gathering. Sir, interrupted Engineer Fuck, we've detected unusual signal patterns emanating from Grid Sector 12. It matches known Hummel encryption signatures. Anne moved to Fuck's station, analyzing the data. That's within striking distance of our lunar command relay. If they compromise that node, they could intercept our backup communications as well. Lam finished grimly, and sudden realization dawned on Anne. Sir, I don't think this is about our communications at all. The energy crisis. Hummel must be after the control systems for the solar collectors. Lam's eyes narrowed. Explain. The collectors operate on isolated systems, but they still require command authorization for major adjustments. If Hummel can simulate legitimate emergency protocols, she didn't need to finish the thought. Control of Earth's energy supply would give them unprecedented leverage. We need to secure those authorization channels immediately. Lam ordered. Anne nodded, already formulating a plan. Junior Lieutenant Ni, prepare the laser communication array. We'll need tight beam transmission to the orbital command without any possibility of interception. As Ni's team prepared the equipment, tension filled the room. The laser communication system was precise but temperamental, requiring perfect alignment between transmitter and receiver. Even minor atmospheric disturbances could disrupt the signal. Colonel, a senior officer spoke up from across the room, I must formally object to this course of action. The silent protocol leaves us vulnerable. For all we know, this could be exactly what Hummel wants, to force us into primitive communication methods they can more easily overcome. Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. The doubt was contagious, threatening the fragile trust essential to the operation's success. Colonel Lam remained unmoved. Your objection is noted. Major Nguyen, he corrected himself, recalling the Major's recent transfer and name confusion. But the decision stands. Lieutenant Anne, proceed with your plan, despite the vote of confidence, and felt the weight of doubt pressing down. What if the dissenting officers were right? What if silent protocol was playing directly into Hummel's hands? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. Laser array calibrated, Nye reported. Atmospheric conditions optimal for transmission. Anne nodded. Inputting the critical security codes that would lock down the solar collector's command protocols, the message had to reach orbital command intact. Any corruption could result in catastrophic misunderstandings. Just as the transmission began, all emergency lights in the command center flashed red. Backup systems blared warnings as displays showed multiple intrusion attempts across the remaining secure networks. Second wave attack, shouted Engineer Fuck. They're targeting our backup systems. Anne watched in horror as the secure database containing backup encryption codes began systematically erasing itself. They're wiping our fallback protocols. The laser transmission to orbital command stuttered. Alignment disrupted by the sudden power fluctuations, and lunged for the manual controls, attempting to stabilize the beam. We're losing it, Ni reported urgently. Connection integrity down to 40%. Reroute emergency power to the array, Anne ordered, fingers flying across the backup controls, and get ready to repeat the transmission on my mark. The room held its breath as the power levels stabilized momentarily, and seized the opportunity, sending the critical security codes in a compressed burst of laser-encoded data. Transmission complete, Ni confirmed after an agonizing moment. But we have no confirmation of receipt. Anne turned to Colonel Lam. Sir, we need to assume the transmission failed. We should prepare alternative measures to secure the collectors. Lam's expression was grim. What do you propose, Lieutenant? Anne pointed to the physical map. We have 3 transport vessels with direct flight capability to Alpha 7. If we send security teams with physical authentication keys, the travel time would be over 2 hours, interrupted Major Nguyen. Hummel could gain control before then. Not if we create a diversion, and countered. We still have control of the low-frequency emergency broadcast system. We could send conflicting commands, force Hummel to defend multiple fronts simultaneously. Colonel Lam considered the plan, then nodded sharply. Do it. As Anne's team prepared the diversion, Engineer Fuck made a breakthrough. "Lieutenant, I've identified the source of the secondary attack. They're using our own satellite relay in Sector 9. Can we shut it down remotely?" Fuck shook his head. "Not without access to the main network," and thought quickly. "Then we'll use the oldest trick in the communications handbook. Junior Lieutenant Nee, prepare the portable laser transmitter." "What are you planning?" Lam asked, watching as Anne gathered equipment. "Hummel has compromised our digital channels, but they can't block what they can't detect." And check the portable laser device. "We'll use line-of-sight laser communication to coordinate a direct assault on their transmission hub." The plan was dangerous, requiring perfect execution with minimal resources, and would lead a small team to a vantage point with direct line of sight to 3 key EPA installations. From there, they would establish a laser light communication network, invisible to Hummel's monitoring systems. As Anne prepared to depart, Colonel Lam pulled her aside. "This is beyond your duty requirements. Lieutenant, the risk is necessary, sir." And finished. "I understand the communications architecture better than anyone. I need to be on site." Lam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed. But remember, the security of our entire system depends on your success." The next hour passed in a blur of tense activity. Anne's team positioned themselves atop the EPA's auxiliary weather monitoring station, a structure tall enough to maintain visual contact with key installations, yet innocuous enough to avoid immediate attention. "Targeting system aligned," Nee reported as they set up the laser equipment. "We have clear sight lines to Northern Command, Orbital Relay Station 3, and the Western Defense Perimeter." Anne verified the connections personally, then began transmitting the coordination codes that would synchronize their counteroffensive. Each laser beam carried precisely modulated light patterns, invisible to anyone not directly in the beam's path and equipped with the proper receivers. As the counteroffensive plan took shape, and received alarming news through their makeshift network. "Hummel has breached the preliminary access protocols for 3 collector stations," she informed her team. "They're moving faster than anticipated." "The diversion isn't working," Nee observed anxiously. "It's working exactly as intended." And corrected. "It's keeping them occupied while we position our forces. Prepare the Phase 2 transmission sequence." The next set of laser communications carried the most critical instructions: deployment coordinates for EPA security forces to converge on Hummel's command hub. The operation required split-second timing and perfect coordination between units that could no longer communicate through conventional means. Just as the final transmission sequence began, Anne's team detected unusual movement on a nearby rooftop. "We've got company," whispered Nee, pointing to figures moving into position approximately 400 meters away. "Hummel operatives?" Anne confirmed, observing through binoculars. "They must have detected our energy signature. Should we abort?" Anne shook her head. "Negative. We complete the transmission, adjust the beam dispersal pattern, make it harder for them to trace the source." As Nee made the adjustments, the Hummel agents began setting up what appeared to be signal jamming equipment. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before their laser network would be compromised. "Transmission at 87%, Nee reported tensely. "Keep going." And ordered, already planning their extraction. Once the transmission completed, they would need to relocate immediately, preferably to a position where they could verify the operation's success. The laser pulse flickered momentarily as the Hummel jamming equipment activated, and quickly compensated, adjusting the frequency to cut through the interference. 95%. Nee updated. "Almost there," and watched the distant figures becoming more agitated as their jamming efforts failed. One pointed directly toward their position. "They've spotted us. Prepare for immediate relocation once transmission completes." "Complete," Nee announced seconds later. "All instructions transmitted successfully. Pack up. We move now." And ordered, already dismantling critical components of their equipment, what they couldn't carry. They would destroy to prevent it falling into Hummel hands. as they retreated from their position and monitored the synchronized chronometer. If their plan worked, EPA security forces would be converging on Hummel's command hub at precisely this moment, guided by the coordinates transmitted through their laser network. They reached a secondary observation point just in time to witness the results. Across the city, power fluctuations rippled through specific grid sectors, the telltale sign of EPA security systems overriding local controls. Ann's secure communicator, one of the few electronic devices still trusted, chirped with an incoming message. It was Colonel Lam, using the emergency channel they had established before Ann's departure. "Operation successful," came his terse voice. "Hummel Command Hub neutralized, primary communications being restored under secure protocols." Relief washed over Anne, but she maintained her professional composure. Casualties? Minimal. They weren't expecting a coordinated response. Most surrendered when surrounded. And the solar collectors? Secure. Your transmission to orbital command was received. They implemented the security lockdown protocols with 2 minutes to spare. There was a note of pride in Lam's voice. "Report back to headquarters immediately for debriefing." The return to EPA headquarters revealed a transformed command center. Systems were coming back online under strict security protocols. Personnel moved with renewed confidence, and Colonel Lam stood at the Central Command podium reviewing after-action reports. "Lieutenant Ann," he acknowledged as she entered, "your team's performance was exemplary." Anne saluted crisply. "Thank you, sir. What have we learned about Hummel's objectives?" Lam gestured to a secure display showing interrogation results. "Exactly as you suspected. They were after control of the solar collectors, not to destroy them, but to hold them hostage. The communications attack was merely a means to an end." "And their ultimate goal?" "Testing our response capabilities," Lam confirmed. "They wanted to assess how quickly we could adapt to a compromised communications network." Engineer Fuck joined them, adding, "The sophistication of their attack suggests state-level backing, though they maintain they're an independent organization. The most interesting discovery," Lam continued, "is that they never expected us to implement silent protocol. Our willingness to voluntarily shut down our own network caught them completely off guard, and processed this information, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and concern. So they underestimated our adaptability." "Precisely." Lam's expression turned somber. "But we cannot afford to become complacent. This attack revealed vulnerabilities we cannot ignore." In the days that followed, the full scope of the Hummel incursion became clear. They had infiltrated communications networks across 17 countries, planting dormant access protocols that could have been activated simultaneously. The EPA's quick response had prevented a global crisis. Colonel Lam called a formal assembly of all headquarters personnel 1 week after the incident. Standing before the gathered officers, he addressed the events with characteristic directness. "The silent protocol drill has been declared a strategic success," he announced. "What began as a hostile action against our communications infrastructure became an invaluable learning opportunity." Murmurs spread through the assembled personnel as Lam continued. "We have demonstrated that, even in an age of instantaneous global communication, we retain the ability to function effectively using alternative methods. This adaptability will be incorporated into our standard training protocols moving forward." He gestured toward Anne, who stood at attention near the front of the assembly. "Lieutenant Mai An's leadership during this crisis exemplifies the innovative thinking required in modern defense operations. Her willingness to embrace unconventional solutions when conventional systems failed was instrumental to our success." Anne maintained her composure as Lam called her forward to receive the Communications Medal, the EPA's highest honor for excellence in her field. As she accepted the award, she reflected on how close they had come to disaster and how the experience had transformed her understanding of truly effective communication. Lieutenant An has also been tasked with developing new backup communication protocols based on the methods successfully employed during the crisis, Lam informed the assembly. These protocols will ensure that no future attempt to compromise our systems will succeed. The following months saw Anne leading a specialized task force dedicated to communication resilience. They developed layered fallback systems combining cutting-edge technology with tried and tested methods that required minimal infrastructure. One evening, as Anne was completing the final documentation for the new protocols, Junior Lieutenant Nee brought her a secure message from Colonel Lam. "He's approved all your recommendations," Nee reported excitedly. "The laser communication network is being expanded to cover all critical installations." Anne nodded, satisfied. "Good. And the training programs?" "Already implemented. All communications personnel are now required to demonstrate proficiency in at least 3 alternative transmission methods." Anne signed the final authorization, then leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a moment of reflection. The Hummel incident had revealed something crucial about the nature of communication itself. Sometimes, saying less was the most effective way to be heard. "You know what the most important lesson was?" she asked Nee. The junior lieutenant considered the question carefully. "That we shouldn't rely too heavily on technology? That's part of it." And acknowledged. "But more fundamentally, it's that true communication isn't about the channels we use, it's about trust. When standard protocols failed, we succeeded because people trusted each other enough to adapt." Nee nodded thoughtfully. The silent protocol wasn't really about going silent at all. Exactly. It was about listening differently. Anne stood, gathering her materials. In a crisis, the most important message isn't always the loudest. As Earth's planetary alliance strengthened its defenses against future incursions, the lessons of the silent protocol drill became legendary in communications training. Lieutenant Mai An's innovative approach to the crisis would be studied by generations of officers, a reminder that in the constantly evolving battlefield of information warfare, adaptability was the ultimate weapon. The solar collectors continued their silent work above the planet, gathering energy to power humanity's endeavors. And beneath them, a more resilient communications network took shape. One designed not just to transmit information efficiently, but to withstand the inevitable attempts to weaponize the very systems meant to connect and protect. In her quiet moments, Anne would look up at the glittering arrays visible from Earth's surface and reflect on how close they had come to losing control of humanity's lifeline. The experience had changed her, transforming her from a by-the-book officer into someone who understood that sometimes the protocols themselves needed to be questioned. Colonel Lam had summarized it perfectly in his final report on the incident. "In an age where our dependence on instantaneous communication has become our greatest vulnerability, the willingness to embrace silence may prove to be our most powerful response." For Lieutenant Mai An, those words became a personal motto, a reminder that in the space between words, in the deliberate pause, in the strategic silence, often lay the most crucial message of all.